From zero to a big dream. At 23 years old, I was stuck in the same routine as so many others, working 3 low-paying jobs just to scrape by. I lived in a cramped, run-down apartment on the edge of town, barely able to afford rent. My days felt like a never-ending loop. Wake up, drink instant coffee, go to work, come home exhausted, repeat. But deep down, I knew there was more to life than this. I couldn't keep living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet. It all started with one simple thought. If others can make it big, why not me? I didn't have experience. I didn't have connections. I didn't even have a business idea. But I had 2 things: time and an unshakable desire to change my life. The first spark. One evening, after another miserable 12-hour shift, I sat down at my old laptop and started looking for answers. I didn't know what I was searching for, just something that could get me out of the hole I was in. That's when I stumbled across an article about flipping items for profit. It sounded simple: buy cheap products online or at garage sales, fix them up, clean them or package them better, sell them for a profit. It was nothing glamorous, but something clicked in my mind. This was my chance, a way to start small, learn, and maybe, just maybe, grow into something bigger. Risking my last $100. The problem? I was broke. I barely had $50 to my name. So, I did the only thing I could. I asked my best friend, Tom, to lend me $100. "Why do you need it?" he asked skeptically, handing me the crumpled bills. "I'm going to turn this into something bigger. Just trust me." I told him, though I wasn't even sure I trusted myself. With that $100, I scoured online marketplaces and found 2 broken smartphones someone was selling for cheap. I spent an entire weekend cleaning them, replacing parts one bought cheaply, and testing to make sure they worked. I wasn't a tech genius, but I watched countless YouTube videos to figure it out. The first sale. Nervously, I listed both phones for sale online. I spent hours refreshing the page, hoping someone would message me. Finally, after what felt like forever, a notification popped up. "Is this still available?" 2 days later, I sold both phones for $200. Couldn't believe it. I had doubled my money. For the first time, I felt like I had control over my future, like I could actually build something. Lesson learned. That first $100 turned into $200, and I knew one thing. I couldn't stop. I wasn't making millions yet, but I'd learned a lesson that changed everything. Success starts with small steps, not big leaps. I reinvested everything I earned, looking for the next opportunity. I didn't know where this journey would lead me, but I knew I was never going back to that endless, miserable routine. The first $1,000. After flipping those first 2 phones, I was hooked. It wasn't just the money. It was the realization that I could take control of my life one small step at a time. I spent every free moment scouring online marketplaces, garage sales, and thrift stores, looking for anything I could buy low, fix up, and sell high. Finding my niche. I quickly learned that smartphones and electronics were gold mines if you knew what you were doing. Most sellers listed broken or for-parts devices because they didn't have the time or knowledge to fix them. For me, it was an opportunity. I invested in a basic toolkit for $25 and watched hours of YouTube tutorials on phone repairs. I spent nights at my small kitchen table, replacing cracked screens, swapping batteries, and cleaning out dusty charging ports. It wasn't glamorous. Half the time I was covered in grease and frustrated with tiny screws, but every phone I fixed felt like a small victory. The snowball effect. Over the next month, I flipped 10 more phones. By the end of the month, I had $1,000 saved up. It might not sound like much, but to me it was everything. It was the first time I had more than a couple of $100 to my name. Here's what I learned during that first month. Start small, but stay consistent. Reinvest your earnings to grow faster. Learn your craft. I wasn't an expert, but I got better at repairing phones every day.
Patience paye off.
I spent hours messaging sellers, negotiating prices, and waiting for the right buyers. The first risk. With $1,000 in my pocket, I knew I could keep flipping phones forever. But I wanted to go bigger. I started looking at bulk deals. people selling 10 to 20 broken phones at once. These were riskier because I had to invest hundreds of dollars up front, but if I could fix even half of the phones, I'd make a huge profit. I found a seller in another state offering a lot of 15 damaged iPhones for $700. I was nervous, it was almost all of my money, but I took the plunge. When the package arrived, my heart sank. Some of the phones were in worse condition than I expected. Missing parts, cracked beyond repair. I felt like I'd been scammed. But instead of giving up, I dug in. I salvaged parts from the worst phones to repair the better ones. I spent 2 weeks fixing them, barely sleeping, obsessing over every detail. In the end, I sold 8 working phones for $1,800. The breakthrough moment. That $1,800 was my first taste of real success. It wasn't luck anymore. It was strategy, hard work, and persistence. I started to see flipping as a real business, not just a side hustle. I created a spreadsheet to track my expenses, sales, and profits. I learned how to negotiate better deals, buy smarter, and sell faster. By the end of 3 months, I had saved up $5,000. That was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. From flipping to scaling. With $5,000, I realized I couldn't keep working out of my tiny apartment forever. My kitchen table was buried under phones, chargers, and tools. It was time to scale up. I reached out to suppliers who sold used electronics in bulk. Instead of repairing phones one by one, I started buying entire boxes of refurbished devices that only needed minor tweaks. I also started selling on bigger platforms like eBay and Amazon, where buyers paid more for well-presented products. The turning point. One day, while packaging orders, I stopped and looked around my apartment. I had dozens of phones ready to ship, stacks of cash in the bank, and a growing list of suppliers. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just making a little extra cash. I was building something real. From $100 to $5,000, I had learned the most important lesson of all. Every big success starts with a single decision to try. The leap into a full business. By the time I had $5,000 saved up, flipping phones wasn't just a side hustle anymore. It was starting to feel like a real business. But I realized one critical truth. To grow big, I had to take bigger risks. The days of fixing phones at my kitchen table were behind me. I wanted to scale up, reach more customers, and make real money. That's when I decided to put everything I'd earned so far on the line. My first big supplier deal. Up until this point, I had been buying from small, local sellers and individual listings online. It worked, but it was slow, and I was limited by how many phones I could find each week. I started researching wholesale suppliers who sold electronics in bulk. After weeks of digging through forums and contacting businesses, I found a company overseas that offered bulk lots of refurbished smartphones and tablets at a deep discount. The minimum order? For $1,000. Nearly all of my money. I spent hours debating whether to go through with it. I was terrified of losing everything, but I also knew that staying small wouldn't get me anywhere. So I clicked send on the payment. For 2 weeks, I barely slept. What if the shipment didn't arrive? What if it was full of junk I couldn't sell? But when the delivery truck finally pulled up, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning. Inside were 100 refurbished phones and 20 tablets. Most were in good condition, better than I expected. I took a deep breath and got to work, creating a system. Selling 10 phones a week was manageable, but 100 phones required a real system. I spent the next month learning how to streamline my operation. Product listing. I created polished listings with clear photos, detailed descriptions, and competitive prices. I even invested in a cheap camera to take professional-looking photos. Customer service. I treated every buyer like a VIP, answering questions quickly and ensuring orders were shipped the same day. Positive reviews on platforms like eBay boosted my visibility. Scaling platforms. I expanded to Amazon Marketplace and Facebook Marketplace, which brought in more serious buyers. Within 30 days, I had sold almost everything in the shipment. My $4,000 investment turned into $9,500 in sales. I reinvested every penny into another bulk order, this time twice the size. The struggles of scaling up. With growth came new challenges. Managing inventory, dealing with customer returns, and navigating shipping delays were exhausting. At one point, I accidentally shipped the wrong phone to 2 different buyers, a mistake that cost me $200 to fix. I also dealt with scammers who tried to buy products, claim they were defective, and demand refunds. It was frustrating, but I learned how to document everything, test every product before shipping, and protect myself. Lesson learned. Scaling up meant more headaches, but it also meant bigger rewards. Turning point, $20,000 in a month. 6 months after that first big supplier deal, my operation had grown beyond anything I imagined. I was flipping hundreds of devices each month, and my small apartment looked like a warehouse. I had more than $20,000 in sales in 1 month alone. It was surreal. People started asking me how I did it, and friends I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to catch up. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control, not just of my finances, but of my future. Building a brand. I knew I couldn't keep working alone forever. To take things to the next level, I made 2 big moves. I rented a small office space. It wasn't fancy, just a room in a shared business complex, but it gave me space to store inventory and work without drowning in boxes. I hired my first employee. My friend Tom, the same guy who lent me $100 at the start, became my right-hand man. He handled repairs and packaging while I focused on finding new suppliers and growing the business. At this point, I wasn't just flipping phones, I was building a brand. I named my company Tech Flip Solutions and created a simple logo. Having a real name and identity made my business look professional, and customers started to trust me more. The first $100,000. Reaching my first $100,000 in revenue felt like hitting the jackpot. But unlike winning the lottery, this wasn't luck. It was the result of countless hours of hard work, risk-taking, and learning from my mistakes. Looking back, I realized how far I'd come. I started with $100 borrowed from a friend. I flipped my first 2 phones for $200. I reinvested every dollar and scaled up, eventually turning my small side hustle into a full-blown business. But I wasn't done yet. My goal was to hit $1 million, and I was just getting started. Hitting my first million, taking bigger risks. After hitting $100,000 in revenue, I realized I was playing small compared to what was possible. I had proven to myself that I could grow a business, but now I needed to scale even faster. The key? Diversification. I couldn't rely solely on flipping phones forever, it was time to expand. I started researching other high-demand electronics. Laptops, gaming consoles, and smartwatches. These items sold for higher prices, which meant higher profits per sale, but they also came with higher risks. I needed to trust my suppliers, invest more money up front, and learn the nuances of repairing and reselling these products. The $50,000 deal. My first big supplier came through again and offered me a bulk lot of 300 items. A mix of broken phones, laptops, and tablets. The cost? $50,000. Even though I had the cash, I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach. 50 grand was real money. If I made a mistake, I could lose months of hard work. But I remembered something a mentor once said in a business forum. Big success comes to those willing to take calculated risks. So I wired the money. The most stressful month of my life. The shipment arrived a week later. My new office looked like an electronics junkyard. Boxes everywhere, half-working laptops, smashed screens, and more tangled chargers than I'd ever seen. For the next month, Tom and I worked around the clock, testing every device, repairing screens and replacing batteries, cleaning up laptops and reinstalling operating systems. Some nights we slept in the office, surrounded by piles of laptops and takeout containers. It was brutal, but I knew the effort would pay off. Within 6 weeks, we sold almost the entire batch, turning that $50,000 into $95,000 in revenue. After costs and expenses, I cleared $30,000 in profit. That was the moment I realized I had cracked the code, building systems that work. With larger deals came more moving parts. I couldn't keep running things manually if I wanted to hit my goal of $1 million. So I did 3 things. Hired more help, I brought on 2 more employees, one to handle customer service and another to help with repairs. Automated processes. I invested in software to track inventory, manage sales, and handle customer feedback. Secured better suppliers. I built relationships with reliable wholesalers who offered consistent, high-quality stock at good prices. By removing myself from day-to-day operations, I was free to focus on what mattered most: finding new opportunities and scaling the business. Breaking through to $1 million. The turning point came when I landed a deal with a retailer liquidating hundreds of gaming consoles and laptops. They were clearing out old inventory to make room for new models. I bought everything at a massive discount, spent weeks refurbishing the units, and sold them for a huge profit during the holiday season. In just 2 months, we generated over $200,000 in sales. That pushed me over the top. My business officially crossed $1 million in total revenue. The moment it hit me, I remember sitting in my office late one night, looking at the numbers on my laptop. $1,002,347. Felt surreal. Just 2 years earlier, I had been broke, drinking instant coffee in a tiny apartment, wondering how I'd ever get ahead. Now I was running a 6-figure business with employees, systems, and loyal customers. I called Tom and said, "We did it, man. $1 million." He laughed. "Told you that $100 loan was a good idea." What I learned. Reaching my first million taught me a lot. But here are the 3 biggest lessons. Start small, dream big. I began with just $100. Small wins add up over time if you stay consistent. Take calculated risks. Every big step I took, whether it was buying my first bulk shipment or expanding into new products, was scary. But calculated risks create opportunity. Build systems and scale. To grow past a certain point, you need systems, automation, and a team to help you. What's next? Making my first million wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. I reinvested in the business, launched an online store, and started offering repair and resale courses to help others learn what I'd figured out. Today, my business runs smoother than ever, and I no longer have to work 18-hour days. But I'll never forget where I started. With a borrowed $100, 2 broken phones, and a determination to change my life. Final words. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: anyone can do this. You don't need to be a genius, have a trust fund, or get lucky. You just need to start, learn, and refuse to quit. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, because that's what inspires me to write interesting stories for you. Share in the comments why you listened to this story to the end, write what you wanted to hear the next story about.